welcome back to the Simple Sports Podcast. We are back after week 4 is over with. It's Tuesday. If you ever wonder why I'm so hard on guys like Dak Prescott, Marcus Mariota, just to name a few, it's because I just watched the Bucs steamroll the Rams and score 50-plus points while Jared Goff turned it over like 38 times. He just got paid an enormous contract, and he's won what exactly? That's why. It's because I'm watching guys like Kirk Cousins absolutely just take a dump all over the field, albeit against the Bears. But if he hadn't been doing it all year, maybe I'd give him that pass. But no, he's been terrible all year. He's been terrible last year, and there's no chance I want to be committed to that kind of a contract with a quarterback that I'm not 100% sold on. And I wouldn't have paid those guys in a million years, not that kind of money. And I wouldn't be giving Mariota or Dak that kind of money either. Not because I don't like him. Clearly I do. I'm a Titans fan. I love Mariota. But there's a lot that comes with that kind of money and that kind of contract. And the kind of play that we've seen from these quarterbacks, no way. No way. Based on play, based on the eye test, based on the end results, I need to see more. We're going to talk about all of that and a little bit more, so let's get started. So I want to spend a few moments. There's a lot of games that I watch. Well, I watch them all, but I want to spend a few moments. I don't want to talk about every single game, but I just want to talk about a few different quarterbacks from a few of the different games. I'm going to start with Jared Goff, the Rams, Bucs versus Rams, and even with Jameis Winston trying to give the game to the Rams at the end, they were in such a hole to start with that it was basically impossible. And how did that game end? Just the way it started, right? Jared Goff turning the ball over. He was absolutely disgusting on Sunday, and he quite frankly hasn't been very good over his last 6 or 7 games. Maybe not 7, but 4, 5, 6 games, somewhere in that stretch, dating back to last year. Ever since Todd Gurley has been mysteriously absent, Goff has been pretty bad. And Sean McVay's offense not only has been figured out, I think, but he hasn't moved to Plan B yet. It's not working. It's 11 personnel. Obviously, occasionally they throw in a few different things. And most of the league now it's 11 personnel. But that's what it is. And you get all these ghost motions and, things of that nature. It's all smoke and mirrors. And, the wide stretch run plays, the heavy play action, taking shots down the field, eating up the middle of the field. It's not fooling anyone anymore. It's just not. And it's not working. I made us think about other teams and who they've beaten and how I need to see them beat tougher teams. I've said that about like Dallas, for example. I said that about the Ravens, to name a few. And that goes for the Rams as well. So say what you want, but the most quote-unquote put-together team that they've faced this year so far through 4 weeks is the Bucs, actually. If you think about it, the Panthers and the Saints both had a quarterback that was either limited or, in Drew Brees' case, flatly out of the game. And the Browns, if you want to include them in that bunch, really hadn't gotten their ish together yet, if I may say that. I believe they have now, but that's another topic for later. The point is the Rams haven't exactly beaten anyone either, and they let the Bucs come into their house and just roll right over them. And it was largely due to the quarterback. But as with all cases, he's not the only one to blame. That's never the case with the quarterback. I just want to make that clear. McVay gets some blame as well. The defense obviously gets some blame as well. They did what they could given the circumstances. But at the end of the day, it's not like they've been this top 5 defense that they probably should be, or at least that's what a lot of people thought that they would be. And if you ever wanted proof, if you ever needed proof that aliens were real, take no look further than Todd Gurley, because somebody abducted him last year in the playoffs or just before the playoffs and sent back this, half-breed imposter, and it's not even close to the same level of production. He doesn't even look like the same athlete on the field. And we know about the arthritic knees. We know about obviously the slow play or the poor play of Jared Goff, but a lot of that play depends on Todd Gurley. And Jared Goff and the offense as a whole is suffering because of it. The team as a whole is suffering because of it. They've got to find a way to get him more involved in the offense, or if that's not possible, get Darrell Henderson off the bench, who can do some of the same things in terms of catching the football out of the backfield. He's probably not the same runner that Todd Gurley is at his peak, but he can do some of the same things. Something has to give, though. I'm no football expert, but I'm not blind either. Something's got to give because Jared Goff is out there drowning, and he needs some help. He needs some help big time. One of the other, another quarterback that I want to talk about, in this case is actually two, is Case Keenum. The Giants and the Redskins, never fear, however, because Jared Goff was not to be outdone by the abysmal Case Keenum. He's been terrible ever since he left Minnesota, and he was puke-worthy against the Giants and basically forced the Redskins to play Dwayne Haskins, who was not ready after they were getting smoked by the newly nicknamed Danny Dimes, apparently. I need to sit on that one for a while. I like it. I don't know if I love it yet. Danny Dimes, we'll see if that sticks. It'll stick as long as he continues to play well. So, but look, the Bears defense the week before made the Redskins look like a completely unrehearsed football team, totally chaotic, totally unorganized, no structure or plan whatsoever from top to bottom. And the only reason they were barely halfway in that game is because they were going against Mitch Trubisky, we'll get to him later. If there was another competent quarterback out on the field, if Chase Daniels had played that entire game, the Redskins would have lost by 70 that night because that's how badly they were getting beaten to the ground by the Chicago's defense. Unfortunately, they were on the field a lot because Mitch Trubisky just... So, what does Case Keenum do? He comes out, follows up last week versus the Bears by taking another dump all on the field against the Giants. In 11 pass attempts, he completed 6 of them, including one to the other team for an interception. And that was enough for Gruden to pull him for Dwayne Haskins. I'd have to imagine some of that had to do with the fact that Daniel Jones is on the other side of the field, and he's looking pretty solid. He was also picked ahead of Dwayne Haskins, who wanted to go to New York. So maybe that had some part in this. But Dwayne Haskins is clearly just not ready for this kind of heat. He didn't play a ton of games in college. Kyler Murray didn't play a ton of games in college. Sam Darnold among a few others. But regardless of who or how much you play in college, if you look at how much Teddy Bridgewater struggled, you're talking about a vet. Now, granted, he hadn't played a whole lot since his injury. He's had some spot duty here and there, played a couple of games. Where was he, with the Jets, I believe? I think he was with the Jets. Anyway, but look at how much he struggled against the Rams versus the next 2 weeks. Backups, in any case, especially a rookie. But in any case, just they're not meant to just be thrown into the fire. That's not what they're there for. At least it's not ideal. Obviously, if you have a solid backup, your quarterback goes down, you bring him into the game, you're hoping that he can carry you home. But it's just not an ideal situation. And it's even less ideal for a rookie. And Dwayne Haskins looked just lost out there. And I'm not saying he won't ever be successful. In fact, I think he will be successful eventually. But he just wasn't ready for that kind of pressure, that kind of heat, even against the Giants, who are woeful themselves. He got no support from anywhere. Nowhere else did he get support. Danny Dimes was carving up. I do like that, Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes was carving up the Redskins defense all day long, and they couldn't move the ball on the ground either. Adrian Peterson turning in a pitiful performance. How much of that is the line in Washington? How much of that is Adrian Peterson starting to look like what an aging running back should look like? I'm not sure. I still think he's got a couple of miles left on that engine. He's a really solid running back. Obviously not what he used to be. Certainly not as explosive as he used to be. But I think he's still a really solid back. I mean, he gave him 1,000 yards last year. So, you put it all in perspective. Haskins has no defense. He has no running game. A coach who was on the hot seat 3 weeks in, now 4 weeks in, and likely gone before season's end. So good luck to Dwayne Haskins. Another guy I want to talk about, Dak Prescott. Oh, the Cowboys. So the Cowboys beat the Miami Dolphins. They beat the New York Giants. They beat the Washington Redskins to start the year. And everybody just couldn't get enough of Dak Prescott. Oh, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is a real quarterback. Give him $40 million a year. Blah, 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 blah. You can't be the Saints team with a supposedly poor defense that you were going to run all over and a backup quarterback. Now, I know it's on the road in New Orleans, which is one of, if not the toughest place to play in all of football. Some may say Kansas City, some may say Seattle. It's one of the top 3 to 5 for sure. No question about that. So whatever, pick whichever one you want. But it's a backup quarterback, and I love Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's a solid starter, but he is a backup right now, and that's just the reality. The Saints, according to everyone, have a pretty bad defense. They're statistically not ranked very well. And that's the problem with people and their statistics. I tell people all the time, the numbers don't tell the whole story. The Saints are, in my opinion, the 3rd best team in football behind the Patriots and the Chiefs. And depending on whether or not Drew Brees is back and healthy and up to his normal ways, they could be the best or 2nd best team in football. Their roster is great. So I look at Dak Prescott, and look, I've said for the last year or so, not a chance I'd be giving him this outrageous contract. And now in recent weeks and months, days even, we've heard in upwards or in excess of $30 or $40 million a year, possibly. At least that's reported what he's asking for. If that's true or not, I can't tell you that. I'm not in those rooms, so I don't know. But that's incredible. And listen, let me make a clear distinct difference here. I don't fault Dak for it, not one bit. In fact, if he can get it, by all means get it, brother, and get it more if you can. But if I were the one running the team, if I were Jared Jones, or if I'm the GM making that decision, in the famous words of the great Rob Parker, no way, no how am I giving Dak Prescott $40 million a year. No, no, no. Now, saying that doesn't mean I don't think Dak's a good quarterback or even a franchise quarterback. In fact, if I were a Cowboys fan, I'd be more than happy with Dak as my franchise quarterback. He's no worse than Tony Romo. He may not be better. In fact, and if you were to put my feet to the fire, I don't think he is better. But if you're talking about results, I mean, he's gotten the same, if not better, results so far in his short career than Tony Romo has had in his entirety. Now, look, that's not all Romo's fault, but we're not going down that road today, so I don't even want to start that. On the right kind of money, I would love to have Dak as my back or as my franchise quarterback, 100%. I could see something close to what Carson Wentz got, considering how little that will seem like in a few years. Sure, no problem. Dak is trustworthy. You know exactly what he is as a player, and you know what you're getting off the field, which is equally as important. At the press conference, at the as outside representation, he's had his slip ups in the past, but he was also a kid. Let's not kill him for being a kid. These guys expect them to come in. He's an NFL quarterback. He's a kid, okay? And regardless of how you may feel about it, and I'm not just saying Dak. I'm just saying quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield is a kid, and kids are going to act the way they're going to act until they figure out how to do it differently. And if this is what works for Baker right now, then that's great. If Baker were doing this at 40 years old, then I'd probably be a little bit more against it. If he were doing this 10 years into the league, probably be a little more against it. But he's figuring his way out, and until he figures it out, let him do it the way he knows how to do it. I don't get that whole thing. But anyway, back to Dak. He's trustworthy. And no, he's not the most talented or maybe even top 10 or 12 most talented quarterback in the league. There are some that just on raw talent are much better than Dak Prescott is. But he's somewhere in the middle in terms of talent. And he can guide the ship where it needs to go. We've seen that. He's guided them to 2 division titles. He's got them into the playoffs twice with the playoff win. That's more than a lot of quarterbacks have done in the last 5 to 10 to, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. See your boy Andy Dalton. I mean, the Steelers have gotten into the playoffs and won a division, but they haven't had much resistance since Ray Lewis has been gone. So there's a lot of guys that can't make that claim. He needs help, of course, and that's most quarterbacks. Most quarterbacks need help in some form. Some do a lot better with, they just need explosive weapons around them. Some, you just give them a great defense and they'll figure the rest out. But they need help in some form. He reminds me of a lot, and I say this in all seriousness. It's Marcus Mariota. And he reminds me of him in that as far as on the field, they're not going to do anything stupid or crazy, right? Mariota might make a run or two that, he probably should have gotten out of bounds when he took a big hit. Maybe shouldn't have thrown that pass, things like that. Dak Prescott will do the same thing. Not so much with the running, but he'll make some throws where you're like, eh. But by and large, they both stick to the game plan. So that's great. You always want them to do that. You need them both to have a lead, really. Neither one is likely to throw you back into the game if you're down, 2, maybe 3 scores early in the game, or, getting towards the end of the third quarter, you're down 10, 14 points. They're probably not going to throw you back into the game. But if you can give them a lead, or at least keep it a 1-score game, I trust them both enough at the end of the game to drive down the field. I've seen Marcus do it more than enough times. I've seen Dak Prescott do it more than enough times to trust them both enough to say, I know that they can lead a potential game-winning drive, or, get down close enough to get a game-winning field goal. I've seen them both do that enough. I just don't think either one of them could travel, say, to New Orleans for a road playoff game by chance, and the Saints get up, for the Cowboys, they're up 10 or 14 points quickly and in a hurry. And I don't think they could recover from that. And similar for the Titans. Like, I don't think that if they went on the road to New England, they did it to the Chiefs a couple of years ago, but that was against Alex Smith. If they got down 21-3 against Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs, I don't think they're coming back from that. But if you can keep it to a 1-score game, close, low score, absolutely, I trust them both. And it's not impossible. It's just much more difficult with a guy who doesn't scare me with their arm, and neither of them do. They can make plays with their arm, but they're not going to carry you. And we saw Mariota against the Chiefs, like I just mentioned. They came back from 21-3 down, but it also took an outstanding effort from what I think is a much better defense than what the Cowboys, maybe not much better, but it's certainly better than what the Cowboys have. And listen, the bottom line about Dak Prescott is I don't think that Dak was necessarily exposed versus the Saints. I think what we saw was a reminder of exactly who Dak Prescott is. And then the last quarterback, or 2 quarterbacks I want to talk about, unfortunately, Kirk Cousins, Mitch Trubisky. Oh, my goodness. Finally, we were saved, or at least half saved, from having to watch Kirk Cousins and Mitch Trubisky face off. I only watched the Bears to see their defense. Same for the Vikings. I really did think Kirk Cousins was, at bare minimum, a lateral move from Case Keenum, if not an ever so slight upgrade. Looks like I was wrong about that as well, because he's just been terrible. He threw 10, 11, 12 passes in week 1. There's a reason for that. You watch the body language of Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen after he fires one into the dirt, and you can tell they've just had it, man. They've just had it. It's like watching A.J. Green watch the Steelers last night. He just had it. It's sad because outside of him and a little TLC given to the offensive line, this team is stacked. They got the running backs. They got the defense is amazing. They have 2 grade A wide receivers, a stud running back, a great defense. And what they don't have is a quarterback that they can trust, or offensive line that could protect him if they did trust him. And that's a problem. And then the Bears, man, just never forget just never forget that they traded away picks to move up one spot to pass up on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson as quarterback. Just remember that. Could you imagine Deshaun Watson behind that offensive line that actually could protect him and not get him beat to death in Houston? That's just going to flat out suck for the next 10 to 15 years if you're a Bears fan, just to know that this defense, one of the best, certainly in the last 10 years, I don't know if I'm ready to put them on the level with like the Legion of Boom or the Ravens defense. They're not close to that. Maybe a step below, maybe along the lines of like those Broncos, maybe not quite even that high, but they're somewhere in there. Trubisky may not make it to the end of his first contract as a member of the Chicago Bears, let alone get a second one. And it's such a shame considering how good this defense is, and it's being completely wasted. So, hey, Chicago, you just do like I'm about to do for this segment and move on. Well, as Baker Mayfield said, you shouldn't have buried the Browns just yet. Or as he more specifically said, throw them in the trash. You had to expect it was going to take them a while. Let's be honest, guys. Basically a rookie quarterback because he came in middle of the season last year. Rookie head coach. Bunch of superstars on the roster. And a team that has been abysmal for 30 years. And you expected this opening couple of weeks to just go swimmingly. No. They got punched in the face in week 1 and took a week or two to recover. But I believe this team is about to get rolling. You need to be humbled on occasion, and it's better to have it happen early in the season than in week 10 or week 12. The Browns got it, and while their outspokenness may not have necessarily changed, you can see that they were affected in their play style. There was a lot more Nick Chubb, a lot more play action, quicker passes, improved defense, guys rallying to the football, and now they're in first place. They had to respond to the noise and the criticism because it was coming, and it was coming down hard. And they did. They responded. And now they're in first place, and the critics are silenced at least for a week. So what's crazy to me is it's the most interested I've ever been in a football team that I wasn't a fan of since I can remember, maybe ever. I've got them going to the playoffs. Said that before the year started, one way or the other, whether it be by division winner or by wild card. They're not getting the 1 or 2 seed, no question about that. That'll belong to the Patriots and Chiefs. It's just a matter of which one gets which. But I do have them going, and it's a tough couple of weeks coming up for them before things lighten up a bit. But I still think 10 wins is in the realm of possibility, especially having beat the Ravens. I actually thought they would start the season 1-3. But they are 2-2. They probably should be 3-1. I'm not so sure that, they probably could have beaten the Rams, but whatever. With the state of this division, that's enough to win it. 10 wins. That should be more than enough. Because if you were dumb enough or bold enough to watch Monday Night Football between the Steelers and Bengals, I feel sorry for you for one, but obviously neither of those teams are going to be anywhere close to the top of the division. And their only competition so far is the Baltimore Ravens, and they now have the early tiebreaker, which is huge. So I still think they're going to come out on top of this division over the Ravens. Speaking of the Ravens, they made me a little nervous as an organization. Lamar didn't make me nervous. I don't necessarily think he played well. But he didn't do anything that shocked me per se. The defense, while they've been off the last couple of weeks, they allowed 500 yards total in back-to-back games for the first time in franchise history, which is a shocker just in general. I'm still a believer in the Ravens, no question, because well-run organizations don't just fall into the tank. My problem is the lack of adjustments that they made and being exposed for almost this one-trick pony. They got down early and couldn't really get back into the game at all. They didn't try to push the ball down the field really at all. And whether that was just stubborn game plan by the coaching staff or a lack of trust in Lamar Jackson, I can't tell you why that's the case. But nevertheless, they did not push the ball down the field. So we'll see if that changes. I believe their defense will get back on track. It's a great defense. I know they played some scrub teams in the beginning, but trust me, this defense is pretty good. They may not necessarily be the top 5 defense that I said a couple of weeks ago, but it's still a top 10 defense, no question about that at all. But what's concerning about me is the offensive game plan will remain what it is. At least if that is the case. If it does remain what it is, that's definitely a concern because it's not going to work for teams like Kansas City or the Patriots or even the Chargers like we saw last year. For one, because you don't have the defense that you did the last year. It's just not the same. That's the first thing. Second thing is, it's even if you have some things on reserve, so to speak, early in the season, trying to gauge where and what the Browns are, that's fine. They say you don't want to show all your cards in the very beginning of the season. So if that's the case, hey, they're smarter than me. So what do I know? I don't think that was the case. I think they just got soundly beaten. But if that is the case, it's going to have to change. They are 3-1 still, so there's no reason to panic. No reason to panic at all. We'll see in the coming weeks, but for now, I'm moving on. And last but not least, of course, I got to talk about my Titans. What I think pisses Titans fans off about this team and about Marcus Mariota the most is that we don't see what we saw on this Sunday more often. That we don't see what we saw week 1 more often. Because instead what we get is this fluctuation, this extreme fluctuation of great football and piss poor football from week to week. No team looks like world beaters 16 weeks a year. It's not possible. The Patriots did it one year. There's a lot of teams that go, 14-2, 15-1. But even in those years, they don't look like world beaters all 16 weeks. The Patriots didn't when they went 16-0. They almost dropped the game to the Giants in the regular season. But can you give us 8, 10, 12 games where you look like a really good team? When Mariota gets out on the field and gets sacked 10 times one week, and then the next week I'm not sure he was ever even tackled on the field, that's a problem. We see teams go up and down all the time. The Patriots didn't allow a touchdown for 3 weeks, and they scored like 150 points. And then they go to Buffalo, and they barely squeak out a win against Josh Allen, who looked terrible. And then they went against Matt Barkley, who looked even worse. And all they could muster up was, I think the score was, 13-10 or 16-13, something like that. But they don't have that back and forth every single week. Maybe 5 or 6 weeks a year, they don't look their absolute best. But out of those 5 or 6 weeks, 2 or 3 of those, they're still going to win it because they'll find a way to win it. They're a well-coached team. And the rest of them, those are going to be their losses for the year, and that's just the way it is. The Titans had a stretch last year where they beat the Jaguars 9-6. Then they got smoked back in back-to-back weeks by the Bills and the Ravens. They should have beaten the Chargers the following week if not for a failed 2-point conversion. And then they come out and absolutely smoke the Cowboys and the Patriots before getting trounced by the Colts and the Texans. That's how that stretch of games went for them. And it's that type of roller coaster that fans hate. They have no idea what to expect from the Titans organization or from the quarterback for that matter. The most consistent thing is the defense, and even the defense sometimes is suspect. And I think that's why there's such a split on the team and on Mariota. I'm not, I don't live in Nashville, so who am I to say that the fan base is split? I'm not saying that they necessarily are, but just engaging with some of the fans on social media and things like that, they're certainly split in that regard. And it's not that most don't think he's good. In fact, I think most do think he's a pretty solid quarterback, certainly an average quarterback, if not a little bit above average on his best day. We've seen him play top 5 to 10 quarterback level games more than once. And the problem is there's zero consistency on which Mariota or which Titans team will show up. Is it going to be the one that gave up 11 sacks in the shutout to the Ravens last year? or the one that beat the Cowboys on the road with Mariota going 21 for 29 for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think he had something like 10 or 11 third down conversions. And more recently, are they the team that hung 40 points on the Browns? No, probably not. That's just not their play style. They don't typically score 40 points. They don't typically score 30 points. But are they really that terrible team that lost to the Jaguars 20-7 on last Thursday night in embarrassing fashion? No, probably not. They're probably somewhere in the middle, of course. The problem is, in order for the Titans to play more than 16 games and win the division for the first time in 10-plus years, their level of play has to level off. No more of this back and forth and up and down mess that we've seen over the last few years. It's got to be at or close to the level we saw against the Falcons at least most weeks in order for the playoffs to happen. You have a top 5 defense, what could be a top 5 at worst, top 10 running game. Please don't ruin it. And that's it for this one, guys. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about the upcoming games in Week 5. We got a lot of games coming up this week that I'm really excited for, so stay tuned for that tomorrow night. Until then, take it easy. Peace.